Welcome back to my almost yearly series about the new regional fleet, just pretend it's 2026. This year I'm going to do something different. I've talked lots about the shortcomings of the new regional fleet, but I thought I should instead provide some ideas on how to seriously improve the regional fleet and the regional network as a whole. Before we start looking at, in my view, the ideal regional fleet, I have to do the customary project update. If I wrote this script just a month ago, I would have had hardly anything to talk about, besides the tester you've probably already seen. But some very juicy things have happened in the last few weeks. First, Transport have opened and closed tender applications to engage a contractor to provide technical advisor services for the regional overnight sleeper service project. Basically, they want a consultant to tell them how best to continue running sleepers to Melbourne. There are hundreds of pages of tender documents, and yes, I've read all the ones I can, but the TLDR is that the project explicitly wants to deliver a minimum viable product, in this case continuing to run the XPTs, possibly with new locomotives, pending investigations into the structural fatigue of the power cars. This is hardly surprising given the ongoing refurbishment. They do note the possibility of continuing the Brisbane Sleeper too. Other objectives are to improve capacity and passenger amenities through dedicated sleeper carriages and services. Whether this means running more than one sleeper car on trains, who knows. Tender applications closed on 28 October, with a decision date likely in early December. The actual contract will last until April 2026 by the looks. Second, Transport have ripped up the original contract with the original consortium tasked to deliver and maintain the trains, choosing instead to sign one contract with CAF to supply the rest of the trains and another with UGL to maintain them. This is a curious choice, and I'm not entirely sure why they've done this particular way. Normally, trains nowadays are bought and maintained for a set period on the same contract, as it forces the manufacturer to make something that actually works, because they have to pay for any fixes and compensate the operator if they fail to meet contractual obligations like availability. This makes me wonder why UGL is still maintaining the trains. There's been a big push from government to return rail maintenance in-house. The XPTs, the Tangara and Oscar refurbs are all being done in-house, and UGL was previously kicked out of Auburn Main Train, and something else might happen as well that I'm not allowed to talk about yet. It's probably just a sweetener to keep everyone out of industrial courts, though. The recent auditor's report, which, by the way, I think is pretty rubbish on the auditor's part and shows a profound lack of industry knowledge, but anyway, hints at an entry to service for the RSETs sometime at or after April 2026. Something else that's not directly relevant but still interesting is that CAF has been added to a UN blacklist by the High Commissioner for Human Rights for conducting business in Palestinian territories occupied by Israel. If you're interested in reading more, I'll leave a link below. Moving swiftly on, let's talk about what makes a good train. What would a traveller expect or appreciate on a journey up to 14 hours long? What would entice new travellers to take the train? I've been thinking about this, and I've condensed my ideas into a single modular fleet design that ensures increased or maintained capacity across the regional network, provides a very high level of comfort and amenity, provides enormous amounts of flexibility, and maintains sleeper options into the future. A set of locomotives and standardised carriages with different interior fit-outs, some with cab cars, would be deployed on long-distance routes, allowing some RSETs to be moved to shorter distance routes, and generally improve the service. Trains would come as two different consists, although all carriages would be compatible and could run in any configuration as required. A long-distance day layout and a long-distance sleeper layout. The day layout would have either one or two first-class carriages, up to 6 standard-class carriages, and a sit-down buffet car, so instead of having your orders taken, meals prepared and eaten at your seat, you order whenever you like at the buffet, it's prepared on the spot, and can be eaten in a little dining area in the other half of the carriage. This differs to some operators which actually wait on tables in a full-on restaurant carriage, which I feel, although very nice, is perhaps a little bit unnecessary. Night trains would have one first-class sitting carriage, one buffet carriage, 5 couchette carriages with private pods in a layout resembling that of the new night jets operated by OBB, which I will travel on shortly, so I'll report back on my experience, and 2 typical sleeper compartments for groups. All in all, this means trains could be up to 9 cars, or about 220 metres, plus a locomotive. The Armadale-Moree service is planned to run with a 9-car R-set, which is also 220 metres long, as far as Werris Creek, so this length should be possible elsewhere. Only the Melbourne and Brisbane services will routinely be this maximum length too. The sitting layouts will be similar to that of the R-sets, with as many shared parts as possible. Some first-class cars will be fitted with cabs, thus first class will always be the furthest from the locomotives. The locomotives themselves will be bi-mode and dual voltage, in preparation for possible AC electrification in New South Wales. Capable of reaching at least 160 kilometers an hour, and on electric mode they'd have a similar performance to the D and R sets to allow for path optimization in Sydney. Maintenance could be performed at Sydenham alongside the R sets. Flemington, as its current allocation of V and K sets will be long gone, or Everleigh depending on what happens to that site. This allows trains terminating at Central to be within an easy reach of a maintenance centre. Some maintenance could also be done at Melbourne, but I'll touch on that in a second. Locomotives will be on the country end of trains, so they can be swapped more easily at Central at short notice. I've had an initial crack at service patterns for both the new fleet and the R sets. These are more medium term as they do require some infrastructure changes in places. The new trains would run 1 daily daylight and 1 daily sleeper return to Brisbane, so 2 daily returns, assuming that more paths through Brisbane can be made available once Cross River Rail opens. Broma Street Platform 2 would ideally be reactivated to allow 2 trains to sit at the same time. Quick turnarounds could be achieved if the tracks are fitted with provisioning facilities and ground power, so that train crew can arrive to prepare and even board passengers onto the morning daylight departure before the sleeper arrives. The sleeper train would arrive onto the free platform, train crew help passengers off and then secure the train until its next departure 12 hours later. The locomotive would be moved from the sleeper straight to the waiting daylight and it would depart. This way, the turnaround time could be as low as half an hour, including refueling. The arriving crew would get a 12-hour break and then repeat the process in the evening. Some security would need to be provided, maybe an agreement that QR would have an observer present or some new fencing or something. The day trains would have 2 first-class cars and at least 3 standard-class cars, but up to 6 in busy times. The Casino daily return would become a shorter variant with 1 first-class car, a buffet, and at least 3 standard-class cars. Broken Hill would become a daily daytime return with 1 first-class, a buffet, and at least 2 standard-class cars. Finally, Melbourne would have a similar arrangement to Brisbane, except that the empty rakes of cars would be shunted away to West Melbourne Depot. It might be possible for them to receive unplanned maintenance here if an agreement was reached with Alstom and V-Line. The daytime trains would be the max length configuration. Throwing this together with the new R-set services, which are mostly relegated to shorter distance routes, you can see the impact these new trains would have. The North region will get its planned daily return 3R to Moree, 6R to Armadale and 3R to Grafton. The North West trains would divide at Werris Creek, being 1 9-car train until then. These would require 2 of each train every day, with 1 each stabling in Moree, Armadale or Grafton. Brisbane will be served as above, requiring 2 locomotives and 4 rakes. In a 24-hour period, 2 rakes would stable at Brisbane. Casino would require 2 locos and 2 rakes, 1 stabling there overnight. The daylight coast trains would be timed about 4 hours apart in each direction, with Brisbane trains departing early in the morning, Casino later in the morning and Grafton in the early afternoon. Overall, there's 1 additional daily return along the north coast. The West region would get a big uplift. 2 locos and 2 rakes would run the daily Broken Hill return, stabling overnight there. Dubbo would get one 3R and one 6R return daily to cycle both types through the depot there, requiring one of each set, with one of these stabling at Dubbo overnight. This represents 6 extra weekly trains in each direction to Broken Hill and 7 extra to Dubbo. Intercity R sets might also be attached empty to the end of a regional train at Orange or Sydney to bring them to Dubbo as well. The South region would also get a big increase, with Melbourne getting a similar arrangement to Brisbane as I've discussed already, requiring 2 locos and 4 rakes with 2 stabling at Melbourne. Griffith would receive a daily 3R return requiring 2 sets, 1 stabling overnight, and Canberra would get a massive 8 return trips a day with 6R trains. I've notionally run with an 0600, 0800, then every 90 minutes to 1700 and then finally 1900, which would require 6 sets, 3 of which would stable overnight at Canberra. This would require passing loops at the absolute minimum, preferably full double tracking of the Canberra line. I've also assumed a half-hour journey time improvement through 160 km/h running and better paths through Sydney. Overall, there's 5 extra Griffith trains a week and 35 extra Canberra trains, and they're longer. Passengers will be booked on the Griffith train for journeys between Sydney and Junee until booked out to create more room for Melbourne passengers. In total, my plan requires 7 3Rs in service, leaving 2 spare, and 9 6Rs, which only leaves 1 spare, but this could be pooled with spare new trains. The new fleet would be in order for 11 locomotives, with 8 required and 3 spares, and possibly one of those spares used for shunting at Sydney if required. 18 first-class sitting cars, enough for my planned services with 2 spares. 14 standard class, including 6 spares. 13 buffets, including 1 spare. 22 couchettes, including 2 spares. And 9 sleepers, including 1 spare. This allows a complete spare day train and part of a complete night train, but in practice these will just be swapped out with individual cars for either planned or unplanned maintenance. A few spares could possibly be left in Melbourne or even somewhere else for swaps away from Sydney. Those are my ideas. Let me know what you think. If you think we should just use standard gauge velocities, please send your feedback to our complaints department where they will be disposed of thoughtfully. As always, thanks for watching and cheers to my members.